UFC Fight Night Kansas City will be taking place this weekend on April 26th, and the main event is going to be Ian Garry versus CP. No, I'm just playing. In all seriousness, versus Carlos Prates. And after watching every single one of these guys' fights in the UFC, over 2 hours worth of footage, I have came to the conclusion that Carlos Prates is going to knock out Ian Garry. And I know what you guys might be thinking. How can Carlos Prates knock out Ian Garry? Well, let me preface by saying Ian Garry has not shown elite striking against the higher level of the welterweight division. I mean, if you go back in his MVP fight, although this is MMA, so obviously you can mix in the grappling and so forth, but he talks a big game that he's able to is the best striker in his division, has the same leg kicks as Alex Pereira, and this is just not the case. He won a grappling heavy decision against MVP. He didn't entertain the striking at all. Maybe besides the first minute. After that, minute 30 seconds in, he is wet blanketing MVP. He knew he was outmatched on the feet. And the same goes for Jeff Neal. He didn't more so take down Jeff Neal because he has great takedown defense, but he played it like the safe man's game, took it to a boring decision, and I don't think he's going to be able to do the same against Carlos Prates. Don't get me wrong, Ian Garry is a good striker that is able to mix in the grappling. He went to Brazil to learn Chute-Box gym from Charles Oliveira to learn the jiu-jitsu game. But against someone in Carlos Prates, he has shown actually quite good takedown defense. He is able to get holed up against the fence. But the real question going down into this fight is, will Carlos Prates be able to defend the takedown? And will Ian Garry be able to get the takedown? Because on the feet, Ian Garry is completely outmatched, and it's not even close. Ian Garry likes to do this, what Israel Adesanya did, and that what kind of got him knocked out. He likes to do that tall guy guard where he just sticks his hand out and then he leaves his chin right up in the air. I'll put in a couple examples. But he's done that so many times throughout all of his fights against D-Rod, against Kenan Song, in his UFC debut, which he was getting outclassed in the first round until he found the perfect opening where his opponent overextended, and he eventually found that straight right hand down the middle. But the whole round before that, he was getting outclassed on the feet. He was trying to use his tall man defense, and really not using his footwork. I feel like a lot of these taller guys, they really rely on their reach to be able to defend, and then in Carlos Prates, he's not going to be able to do that. I mean, Carlos Prates is a 4-inch reach advantage. This is something that, besides MVP, Ian Garry has never went up against somebody that has a reach advantage over him, especially a 4-inch reach advantage. And you're not going to be able to just leave your chin up in the air and then try to exit off of your reach, because Carlos Prates is always going to be there. He's going to be able to hit you while you're not able to hit him. 4 inches is a massive reach advantage. And another thing regarding Carlos Prates is that he's very good at getting people, cornering them in the cage, kind of like an Ilia Topuria or an Alex Pereira. He's very good at cutting off the cage, and you'll find yourself just back up against the cage, nowhere to go, and you're going to try to exit left or right, and then Carlos Prates is going to meet you with a hook, as he's done against the Leech. He did that just in, I think, not his last fight. I think that was against Neil Magny. But the fight before, he showcased that against the Leech. And in the Neil Magny fight, he was up against the cage as well, and he cornered him and knocked him out up against the cage. So his ability to cut off the cage is otherworldly, to say the least. And don't let me get started on if he's able to build momentum, because Carlos Prates kind of reminds me of an Alex Pereira. Once he gets his momentum going, he's able to get the ball rolling, and he's able to find that knockout shot. And what Ian Garry needs to do in this fight is always try to disrupt, always try to at least go for a takedown, or just keep him thinking. Because if you let Carlos Prates build up that momentum, he's going to find that shot. It's not a matter of if he's going to find the shot. He will find the shot. I mean, in all of his UFC fights, it's all been by knockouts. And And although he does have a couple of losses early on in his career, you can't really judge somebody from what happened, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. People evolve as fighters. I mean, look at Charles Oliveira. He took hella losses in the UFC before going on to that 12-fight win streak, eventually being snapped by Islam Makhachev. But to say the least, people can improve. But one thing that Carlos Prates does have to watch out for is when he gets you hurt right up against the cage, he tends to get a little bit too wild in exchanges, and he leaves openings for his opponent to essentially just come back into this fight. I mean, you see it before against Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya in the second fight. We thought he had him hurt. He did actually have him hurt. He buckled his leg, got him up against the fence, and he was getting a little bit too careless. And eventually, as we all know, he got too careless, left some openings, and Israel Adesanya came right down the middle and was able to knock him out. And the same thing happened, not on the same degree, but the same thing happened against Li Jingliang. While Carlos Prates had him hurt up against the fence, Li Jingliang hit him with a nice 1-2 that seemed to have stumbled him back and gained the respect of Li Jingliang. That is one thing that Carlos Prates really needs to watch out for in this fight, because Ian Garry is good at, although he doesn't have too much power, I know he has kind of like the soy boy diet, he's not as much of a power striker, at least against the high level competition. One thing he's good at is shot selection. If you overextend on Ian Garry, he will be able to hit you on the chin, and when you're not expecting it, that's when people get knocked out. If you're not seeing it coming, that's when it'll touch your chin, and that's when the lights will go out. But in this fight, I see Ian Garry being able to take Carlos Prates down, but I don't see Ian Garry being able to do anything with it. I feel like, within maybe the later rounds, he might take him down once or twice, but if he's not able to stay down on the ground, and if Carlos Prates is able to keep it on the feet, Ian Garry is completely outmatched. He has terrible defensive boxing. He has not the best footwork. I mean, he really relies on being tall. That is just like his whole fighting MO. And ultimately, I'm going to see Carlos Prates being able to knock Ian Garry out, I would say within the third round. I can see Ian Garry giving him a bit of troubles, maybe taking him down once or twice within the first to the second rounds. But in the third round, Carlos Prates is going to be able to get his momentum going. And like I said, once Carlos Prates gets his momentum going, there's no stopping him. It's like trying to stop a train that's already going at 50 miles an hour. It's completely impossible. You're going to get hit. And I can see Carlos Prates knocking him out cold in the third round. That's going to be all I have for you guys today. Let me know what your guys' picks are in the comment section below. If you have Carlos Prates or Ian Garry, and tell me why.